It's a mother lode because they went all over Europe and looked at all the coronary disease patients, a sample across ages 18 to 80 and across 24 European countries. So you can't say, oh, well, they're genetically different in Eastern Europe where you looked at them, and that's why the result doesn't apply everywhere. And you can't say, oh, well, you're only looking at young people, and that's different. They looked at everything. So whatever they say goes, right? This is heart disease. This is the answer to heart disease, you could say. So what did they see? Well, at first they saw, oh my God, embarrassing. A third of them were type 2 diabetics on their medical record already from the get-go, of all of these people, regardless of age. But they looked close at the glucose. They were looking at oral glucose tolerance, A1C, fasting glucose, 2-hour glucose. They were looking at glucose closely, which no one usually does. So they saw that another quarter are full-blown type 2 diabetic. They just haven't been diagnosed. So now over half of them are full-blown type 2 diabetic, right? It's a bit embarrassing. But when they looked at the data, they realized actually another quarter are, they called it high risk for type 2 diabetes, but it was type 2 diabetes. It just hadn't reached the ridiculously high bar to be called it, but it was frank type 2 diabetes. 3/4 of all the heart disease patients in Europe are type 2 diabetic. And as myself and Dr. Gerber and others pointed out, they didn't even test their insulin, and that's the earliest laboratory test for type 2 diabetes. Glucose doesn't show you or a lot of the people. You need to use insulin. So if they used insulin, they pick up another big chunk. See what I'm saying? Nearly the whole pie. Nearly the whole pie of cardiac disease is essentially insulin resistance type 2 diabetes. If you took that out, heart disease would not disappear. There's lots of special problems and arrhythmias, but it'd almost disappear. Insulin resistance, biggest game in town. Primary cause early death, just a quick reminder, if you search for insulin resistance and any of these conditions on our kind of board of death, you're going to have masses of papers to read in the scientific literature. So insulin resistance is connected intimately in hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of studies to all of these conditions I showed you, because essentially it kind of underpins them all. Insulin resistance is a model of accelerated aging, as Dr. Von Rosedale said. It's a model of accelerated aging. If you push insulin resistance in a person, you accelerate their aging, and they're basically falling apart. Neuropathy, heart muscles, heart vessels, the brain, Alzheimer's. Turn on insulin resistance in someone and you start spinning the clock forward. If you view it that way, that's what you're doing. That's what you're doing. So it's not just insulin resistance and blood glucose, because I keep talking about that. I just like focusing on the biggest thing, Pareto principle. There's lots of other problems like inflammatory drivers, and obviously smoking is going to accelerate your aging. You ever see someone who smokes a lot? Particularly ladies, unfortunately, skin is affected, everything's affected. So autoimmune and infections can be a big problem, and mineral and vitamin deficiencies like vitamin D deficiency, magnesium deficiency, they'll all destroy your machine too. But this is the big one and the primary diet-related one. So we focus on the biggie. And I just show they're linked to everything. Interestingly, survey in the US around 2015, I think it was, 65% approx of US adults over 45, that group of all US adults over 45, are pre-diabetic or diabetic, type 2. And pre-diabetic is diabetic. Pre-diabetic is a nonsense. They call it pre because it's too embarrassing to call it diabetic and admit that 2/3 of your adults are diabetic. That's politically impossible. So no one's going to change that threshold. This is political. You can't deal with 65% have type 2 diabetes. It's funny how a lot of this is political. And myself, Dr. Gerber, Professor Noakes, and my huge network around the world generally would guess it's probably 80% if they measured insulin. And just a note that pre-diabetic, diabetic, insulin-resistant, hyperinsulinemia, insulin-resistant syndrome, syndrome X, cardiometabolic syndrome, I could go on all day. All of those things mean the same thing. There's papers using them all, and it's like there's all of this crazy different stuff going on. It's a lie. It's all diabetes type 2. So just so you know, one way to confuse everyone is to call it different things. and all talking pompously from papers with different names, and everything is, you have to be an expert to know this. It's all nonsense. It's all diabetes. It's all diabetes. Quickly, public health collaboration wraps up all of the studies on weight loss in one go. Great guys, phc.co.uk. And essentially, low carb in studies beat low fat 36-0 in 36 of the main good studies. So that's the ones that are statistically significant. It was 58-7 when it wasn't significant, the result, so you can't really say it. But the ones where the result came up as statistically significant and you can stand over it, low carb beat low fat 36-0. So when you hear, oh, low carb is not good and oh, low carb is a fad, 36-0 in the published literature, but industry has to push low fat. They just have to, because the whole cholesterol business and the whole processed food business is utterly dependent on low fat. There's no going back. And that's why you hear everyone talking nonsense. So low carb wins every time, just every time. Feynman, a pal of mine, New York professor, he's great. I love this. He said the best statistical test, and he's an expert in statistics, but he said it's the eyeball test. Because when you do advanced statistics, and I've seen this a million times, you can use it to basically obfuscate and actually create a fraudulent conclusion. I see it all the time. You just do enough statistical manipulation and p-hacking and selection, and you can actually get your funder's desired outcome, even when it's not true. They all do it. So he said, just use your eyeball, guys. And basically, disease has gone through the roof. That's diabetes in the last 40 odd years, while red meat consumption per person has been coming down. So any engineer would know, and presumably lay people as well, if something's coming down over 50 years and your disease is going through the roof, the only thing you know is it's not that thing, okay? If that thing, red meat, was going up, you could say it might be the meat, but it might not. But when the meat's been coming down while that's been going up, you know the red meat has no part in modern chronic disease. And the actual fact is, it's a superfood because it brings so many nutrients and it brings so few carbs or vegetable oils. So meat is a superfood. Whatever you think about, animal welfare and all, it's a separate issue. Meat is a superfood for Homo sapiens. The only reason Homo sapiens are here, or we're in this room, is because the hominids began to scavenge and eat meat. And they traded off their large guts, digestive freedom. They traded it off for a big brain. So the gut got small because they were eating all these nutrient-dense foods, and the brain was allowed to expand. And then the hunting developed the brain a lot as well, because you had the whole natural evolution that the successful hunters, the fastest, the cleverest, tended to be more successful. We ended up here in this room. But now we can choose to not eat meat if we do a careful diet. But to get here, it's just an important point that's accepted in paleoanthropology across the board. So there you go. So that's the meat scam. And the problem, of course, is what went up over the 50 years is what I told you. Sugar, refined grains, and industrial vegetable oils. It's not rocket science. I call it for a long time the Devils Triad, because for me, that's it. It's the simplest answer. Why do we have modern chronic disease through the roof? It's the Devils Triad: sugar, refined grains, and vegetable oils, which is ultra-processed food. That's it. I'm sorry it's so simple, but that's it. And just briefly, sugars. This is from David Unwin. There's masses of glucose, which is sugar. It's not like table sugar, like Coca-Cola sugar, but it's sugars. Basmati rice, potatoes, white bread, obviously French fries, spaghetti. These are masses of spoons of sugar per serving. It's masses of sugar, And then down, when you get eggs and all, there's no sugar. That's a simple point. And I mentioned the orange juice. Orange juice is higher sugar per pint than Coca-Cola. We all know you can't drink Coca-Cola. It's a sugar explosion. Orange juice is worse. It's got some nutrients, but you can get them elsewhere. And ultra-processed food is full of sugars. We had this cartoon in our book. This guy's wondering, is there a connection between how I am and what the government has been telling me? And there is, of course, because bread and starches is down the bottom. You know, so that's what the result is. And refined carbohydrates, they come in many forms. So even your whole grain bread is a highly processed, ultra refined carbohydrate grain. But we think, well, this is healthy, right? No, no, no. This bagels, this, you know, it's all the same. These cereals, they're all carbohydrates with sugar. So, you know, these bars, I mean, unfortunately, crackers, they're all refined carbohydrates, ultra refined. And that's the problem. So that's part two. And they pack them into ultra processed foods. And finally, the vegetable oils. I don't know where I got this years ago, but there's something evocative about it. But it's very good because it's like, would you really drink this factory chemical oil that they use hexane and solvents to extract from seeds with high temperature and pressure? And then they deodorize it because it's a rancid muck and they can't sell that. So they have deodorizing chemical step. And then they take out the warning odor that nature gave us. They take away the warning and then they color it to make it golden. That's what you get in vegetable oil. So people perceive from the media that someone just crushed a broccoli and this beautiful oil came out. It's a complete lie, complete lie. You can avoid all the bottles, but the problem is, and the margins are just revolting, the problem is it's invisibly in all the ultra-processed food. So even if you say, well, I don't use vegetable oil, I don't use this margarine, I use butter. But every time your hand strays in the supermarket, most of the products in the supermarket, look on the back. Canola oil will be nearly top of the list of ingredients, i.e. it's the most calories is from the vegetable oil. They packed it with mayonnaise is something like 82% vegetable oil, Hellmann's. 82% is vegetable oil. You might as well be like that lady, right? When you're eating mayonnaise. Dietary scapegoats, and I'm going to speed through here. Of course, they scapegoated the competitor. When they said we had to eat all of this nonsense, well, they can't have you looking too much at real food. That's a competitor. It's a competitive threat. That's why they keep attacking real foods. It makes no sense. Why would they attack the foods we ate since human evolution that got us here? Well, they're a competitive threat. They have poor shelf life, and you can't make corporate big bucks and international trade on real foods. So they attack them all the time. Organ meats are superfoods, eggs are superfoods. They're the two top superfoods on this planet, in my mind. And of course, vegetables are good. Fish is fantastic, and high-fat things like avocado and olives are great foods too. At its simplest, you have to, ain't easy, but after a few weeks when you do it, the transformation can be astonishing. You cut out all the ultra-processed foods, the Devils Triad, and you replace them with real food. And after a while, like me 10 years ago, I loved my new lifestyle. I got used to eating real food. I got a taste for real food again. And I lost the taste for the sugar and the addictive refined carbs. And when I lost that, it was fantastic because now I had actually walked beyond it. And once you get there, like everything's better. You don't want to go back. You don't want to go back. So you do that. Exercise is also very important. I don't want to understate it. And potassium, magnesium, and EPA, DHA, fish oil. And there's a bunch more. It is important to make sure you're replete and well up in all these crucial vitamins and minerals. This paper, and I'm going to finish on this, Dariush Mozaffarian, I chaired a debate years ago between him and Gary Taubes, the big New York Times author who did Good Calories, Bad Calories. And Gary wasn't amazing, but it was interesting because Dariush is a huge figure in nutrition. I mean, Mozaffarian is huge. He is on so many papers, and he was a big attraction for that conference of 800 people in Denver that we had. So I just wanted you to know he's a huge guy, massive influence, very connected to industry, and was very connected to Unilever and vegetable oils. But I'm sure that's not relevant. Tufts University came out with this new food compass system with a suggestion that we've done all the work now, guys, to close the question on food. We've made a new system with 5,000 foods, and we've scored them all. And it can be a universal guideline of what to eat, what to kind of avoid, and what to really avoid. So this is the experts, top experts' answer to our problem of food and quality of food and what we should eat. So we'll take a look. And Nina Teicholz put this together, by the way. Great, great lady. Up the top, which is to be encouraged, and with an insinuation that you can kind of eat it with abandon or not worry about it because it's really good food, so you don't need to worry too much about it. What do we got? Watermelon, the highest sugar fruit there is, with very little nutrient. Orange juice with calcium. With calcium's irrelevant, so they're saying orange juice. Now, I called out orange juice as the bête noire. It's the worst possible thing to get addicted to. It's up at 87. Eat as much as you want, drink as much as you want. It's the best. Frosted mini wheats. You can't make it up, but this is published. Do you see the gall that they have? Do you see the absolute arrogance of batting for industry from Tufts University? This outrageously. That's how bad they are. And they own the media. When you see articles on nutrition, these guys are the guys who are contacted by the media. Certainly not me or Werner. Sweet potato fries. I mean, come on. Honey nut Cheerios. I mean, honey nut cornflakes. Years ago, I looked at the back of the packet, and even I was astonished how much sugar they put in it. I actually thought, woo, how do they hold it all together with that much sugar? It's crazy. It's up at 73. It's in the green zone for these guys. And then if you quickly, and I'm going to finish on this, egg substitute fried in vegetable oil. That almost got into the green, kind of one of the best class of foods there is. See what I mean? It's crazy. And what Lucky Charms, I think that's a cereal, or is it actually sweets? It's a cereal, but like everyone knows that it's all multicolored sugar bomb. But it's in there at 56. Now I'm going to have to, what's down as the worst foods then? Because we know what they're telling us to eat. What are they telling us not to eat? Because it'll cause disease, I guess, diabetes, obesity, you're going to get fat. What's the worst tree down the bottom that Nina pulled out? Whole egg fried in butter, cheddar cheese, ground beef. Isn't it hard to believe? Do you see the audacity of them? They are so used to utterly owning the media and the nutritional universities, etc., that we can see in this that they just figure we can do what we want. We own the space.